Kaveri, will move on.
Good morning to one and all present here. I take this opportunity to welcome and thank all our delegates and participants for rendering your precious time and blessings as with your esteemed presence. My first bunch of thanks goes to the Almighty who has helped us to begin this session with peace. Thank you, God. A smile costs less than electricity but brings more light in life. On behalf of Ratnavel Subramaniam College of Arts and Science, Sulur, Coimbatore, the Department of Biochemistry under DPT STAR scheme cordially welcomes you for the online webinar on staff safety measures for laboratory staff. A day without prayer is a day without blessings. Now, I would like to call upon Varsha of First MSc to give the prayer song. I welcome you, Varsha.
മുപ്പാലും കീഴടക്കാൻ തങ്ങളിലൊപ്പം വിളങ്ങിടുമ്പോൾ ആത്മാർത്ഥരാം ലോകത്തിൻ നന്മകൾ മഹിമയ്ക്കുമുണ്ട്
Thank you, Varsha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your positive action combined with positive thinking results in success. It's my great honor to call upon our respected HOD ma'am, Ms. Shamina, Department of Biochemistry, to give the welcome and inaugural address. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kaveri. A warm good morning to one and all present here. We, the Department of Biochemistry, happy to welcome the teaching, non-teaching, and the laboratory staff and students who have gathered for this program of online webinar activity for laboratory staff under the DPT STAR Scheme College. So this program is mainly organized by the Department of Biochemistry, Ratnavel Subramaniam College of Arts and Science, with the motto to understand the safety measures that are needed to follow in a laboratory. It's our pleasure in welcoming our chief guest, Dr. B. Chandramogan, Scientific Officer, School of Biological Sciences, National Institute of Science, Education and Research, Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India, Bhubaneswar. We welcome you, sir. On behalf of the department, we are very happy to hear your topic, safety measures for laboratory staff. At this onset, I'd like to thank our management, secretary, principal, vice principal, and all the higher authorities and the DPT STAR College coordinator for motivating us and allowing us to conduct this program. I also assure this program will definitely enlighten us with the safety measures that we need to assist during the laboratory works. Stay connected and stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now it's time to start the session. I'm glad and respectfully and cordially welcome Mr. Shivaganesh, Associate Professor, Department of Biochemistry, to give the introduction of our chief guest. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Kavya ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, good morning to all. So, it's my great privilege and honor to introduce our resource person, Dr. B. Chandramohan, Scientific Officer, School of Biological Sciences, National Institute of Science Education Research, NISDR, Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India, Bhubaneswar. First of all, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation for conducting the DBT-sponsored online webinar on safety measures for laboratory staff during your busy schedule. Actually, this topic is very important for all of us because we all are doing our practicals in our laboratory. We should know how to handle the chemicals in the lab and follow the safety measures during the practicals and research projects. Academic aspects of our chief guest, he did his BSc Zoology in July 2003 at University of Madras, MSc Animal Biotechnology in Bharathidasan University, Trichy in July 2005. He was awarded the PhD in Environmental Science and Public Health related to the molecular genetics in June 2011, University of Camerino, Italy. His research of interest is mainly focused on molecular genetics and disease ecology. Publication, he published many research articles in various reputed peer-reviewed national and international journals with a high citation index. Teaching and research experience, he served as a lecturer in Indira Gandhi College of Arts and Science, Pondicherry, from August 2005 to December 2007. Guest research advisor in Perinthalaivar Kamaraj Krishi Vigan Kendra, Pondicherry, from December 2007 to March 2008. He posted as a postdoctoral research associate from March 2011 to March 2012 in University of Camerino, Italy. Research associate in Kerala Veterinary and Animal Science University, Kerala, from April 2012 to December 2012. Acted as a senior research officer from December 2012 to December 2015, Kerala Veterinary and Animal Science University. Is acted as a scientist, Saigenum Research Foundation, Cochin, Kerala. Fellowship and awards, excellent performance in PhD research 2011, awarded by the Research Committee, University of Camerino, Italy. International PhD Fellow Award by the University of Camerino from 2008 to 2011, he is secured in first rank. Honors, acted as the Joint Secretary, Treasurer in Animal Science Club 2003 to 2005, Bharathidasan University, Trichy. On behalf of the management, secretary, principal, vice principal, and all the faculty members of the Department of Biochemistry, Ratanavel Subramaniam College of Arts and Science, Sulur, Coimbatore, I welcome you, sir, for this program. So, thank you, one and all. Thank you. Now, I have hand over the session to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, you can take up the session.
Yeah. Now,
Is it possible?
yeah, I'm doing it.
Okay, sir.
Listen now on this screen. So I could not share my screen here.
Sir, there is a present now at the bottom.
Yeah,
That you press.
But with that,
That you just
with that share is not.
Share is not coming. Okay, no
Yeah,
issues.
share is not.
PPT to my mail, I will share for you. No issues.
Yeah, sure. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, to
I'm
my
sending
mail
it.
ID, Shamina@RVS, you just share, sir.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Shade, sir.
No, no. 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, sent.
Sentence. Okay, sir.
So here, from here, I do not do, not to do anything from here, my side, right?
Yeah, sir. I will present for you. Once it,
Yeah.
I get the mail, I will download it and I'll do it for you.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, sir. I got your PPT. Let me download it for you.
Yeah.
I'm sharing my screen for you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Hope it's visible for you, no, sir?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Shall we start then?
Yes, sir. We can start.
So good morning to all. I hope you are all fine in this pandemic situation. And I'm happy to present today the safety measures for laboratory staff. Yeah, let me start with the PowerPoint. Yeah. So lab safety is one of the most important concern when you are working no, just keep safety the title slide itself. Yeah, lab safety is one of the most important concern when you are working with. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Perfect.
Yeah, So when you are working with medical supplies, hazardous chemicals, and heavy duty instrument, because accident can easily occur when working in the lab, and it is very critical to pay attention to the proper care and usage of supplies you use in the lab. Working in a lab is a high risk environment, and the lab staffs and experts will have frequent training to keep up to date on the proper safety precautions they need to take on a daily basis. From wearing protective equipment to properly carrying the toxic chemicals, there are many safety rules you must follow when you are working in the lab. So, so my presentation goes this way with an introduction, and I will say general laboratory safety, housekeeping safety, dress code, personal protection, chemical safety, electrical safety, laser safety, signage, good general work practices, and a conclusion. So my presentation goes in such a way, and I'll explain you in details about what are the safety measures we have to take, in the laboratory in different situations. Okay, so laboratory staffs are the backbone of a scientific research lab. So without them, we cannot do anything in the laboratory. So their work is almost entirely laboratory based, and the technicians may work alone or as part of a team of scientific staff. They can work in most area of science, including forensic, laboratory, health, and manufacturing industry too. The area a laboratory staff works in will largely dictate the work they do. If they are in medical environment, they might be analyzing blood fluids or tissues, conducting blood tests, and examining cells. If they are working for a food and drink manufacturers, they might be testing food and drink samples to detect contamination or ensure quality. Next slide, please. So here I have summarized some of the responsibilities of lab staff. Laboratory staffs, sorry, 1 minute. So these are all the typical responsibilities taken by this lab staffs: conducting and supporting scientific investigations and experiments, planning, setting up and undertaking controlled experiments and trials, recording and analyzing data as and when required, demonstrating procedures as and when required, collecting, presenting, preparing and testing samples, maintaining, calibration, cleaning and testing sterility of the equipment as and when required, providing technical support as and when required, presenting results to the senior staff for discussion, writing reports, reviews and summaries, keeping up to date with relevant scientific and technical developments, carrying out risk assessment as and when required, ordering and maintaining stock and resources. So these are all considered to be typical responsibilities of a laboratory staff. Why I'm explaining all this means, so by the way, we can understand what are the risks associated with laboratory staffs. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I have summarized the importance of the laboratory for understanding. So experiments plays an important role in the progress of science, as a large number of inventions and path-breaking discoveries have been possible through investigations that are usually carried out in the laboratories. That's why it's very important. A science laboratory is a place where basic experimental skills are learned only by performing a set of prescribed experiments. Safety procedures usually involve chemical hygiene and waste disposal procedures and significant physical and health hazards associated with the laboratory. Safety is a learned behavior that must incorporate in our instructional plan. There are several safety aids available, which includes posters, safety contracts, safety quest, safety citations, texts, and handbook on secondary science safety, and a variety of safety equipment. The two issues, handling of hazardous material and laboratory safety, are sometimes overlooked in research, but no researcher is immune for accidents. That's why it's very important. Next slide, please. So therefore, next slide, please. Therefore, researchers should review information and procedures about safety issues, which includes an appropriate usage of protective equipment and clothing, safe handling of materials in laboratories, safe operation of equipment, safe disposal of materials, safety management and accountability, hazard assessment process, safe transportation of materials from laboratory to laboratory, safe designing of facilities, and emergency responses, etc. Next slide, please. No.
Previous one, sir.
The previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having a strong set of overall laboratory safety rules is essential to avoid disaster in the lab, because a laboratory basically has micro and macro environment. Micro means within the inside the laboratory, and macro means outside the laboratory. So when we talk about the safety aspect, we have to consider both. So yeah, be sure to read all fire alarm and safety signs and follow the instructions in the event of an accident or emergency. So this is most important. Ensure you are fully aware of your facility building evacuation process. Make sure you know where your lab safety equipment, including first aid kits, fire extinguishers, eye wash stations, and safety showers is located, and how to properly use it. Because people know where it is located, but they doesn't know how to use it properly. So know emergency phone number to use to call for help in case of an emergency. That is most important. So we have to write this emergency number near to the laboratory or inside the laboratory also, which would greatly help during the emergency situation. Lab areas containing carcinogen, radioisotopes, biohazards, and lasers should be properly marked with the appropriate warning signs, because these are all high risk chemicals. Like carcinogen means you must be knowing very well. So open flame should never be used in the laboratory unless you have permission for a qualified supervisor. Make sure you are aware of where your lab exit and fire alarm are located. So this is most important during the emergency. We never know, how to escape from the situation without these signs. So always work in properly ventilated area. The next slide, please. Do not chew gum, drink, or eat while working in the laboratory. Laboratory glassware should never be utilized as food or beverage container, because in some of the laboratories I have seen people, drinking, using the beakers, which was used for the, research purpose. Each time you use glassware, be sure to check it for chips and cracks. Notify your lab supervisor for any damaged glassware so it can be properly disposed or replaced. Never use lab equipments that you are not approved or trained by your supervisor to operate. If an instrument or piece of equipment fails during use, it's not operating properly, report the use to your issue to the technician right away to get a issue solved. Never try to repair an instrument problem on your own, because if you know something, then you can start. Otherwise, it is better not to touch. If you are the last person to leave the lab, make sure to lock all the doors and turn off all ignition sources, because this is very important. People, when they go out, they simply ignore this kind of ignition sources. So that may lead to a big disaster later. Do not work alone in the lab if it is necessary, unless if it is necessary. Never leave an ongoing experiment unattended, because each and keep watching it. Never lift any glassware, solutions, or other types of apparatus above eye level. Never smell or taste a chemical from your laboratory. No. The previous slide. Yeah. So keep in mind that do not pipette, any chemicals by your mouth. Make sure you always follow the proper procedure for disposing lab waste, because this point is lacking in many of the laboratories, and we do not have separate dustbin for keeping all these wastes. So this may lead to some physical hurt for the cleaning staff. That's why it is very. Report all injuries, accidents, and broken equipment or glass right away, even if the incident is running. If you have been injured, yell out immediately and as loud as you can to ensure your in the event of chemical splashing into your eyes or your skin, immediately flush the affected area with running water for at least 20 minutes, even up to 20 to 30 minutes would be ideal. If you notice any unsafe condition in the laboratory, let your supervisor know as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Next slide. Good housekeeping practice can significantly reduce the risk of accident and exposure to hazardous material, because this is a very important point I used to stress to all of my students. To keep housekeeping, well organized. Good housekeeping means that the area is kept clean and items are stored in appropriate area to ensure safety of students. If everything is organized, then lab will be more productive and cost effective. So always keep your work area tidy and clean. Make sure that all eye wash station, emergency shower, fire extinguisher, and exit are always unobstructed and accessible. Only materials you require for your work should be kept in your work area. Everything else should be stored safely out of your way, so that may keep you away from accidental spilling. Only lightweight items should be stored on top of the cabinets. Heavier items should always be kept at the bottom. Solid should always be kept out of the laboratory sink. Any equipment that requires airflow or ventilation to prevent overheating should always be kept clear. Next slide, please. Dress code. So you are ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, I'm having one more presentation here, so with that only I'm following it.
Yeah. Housekeeping, then
Yeah. Next dress code. Yeah.
yes.
So as you would expect, laboratory dress codes set a clear policy for the clothing employees should avoid wearing in order to prevent accidents or injuries in the place laboratory. For example, skirts and shorts might be nice for enjoying the warm weather outside, but quickly become a liability in the lab where skin can be exposed to heat or dangerous chemicals. So, in foreigners they do that, but in Indian, we are not doing this kind of stuff. I'm very happy about it. So always tie back hair that is chin length. Make sure that loose clothing or dangling jewelry is secured, or avoid wearing in the first place. Never wear sandal or other open-toe shoes in the laboratory. Footwear should always cover the foot completely, because sometimes if there is a spillage of acid, this footwear, the cover footwear will secure you from it. So never wear shorts in the lab. When working with Bunsen burner, lighted switch, matches, etc., so acrylic nails are not allowed. Next.
Yes, on the audio, please. Participant, please move. Manda, Shivani, can you mute your video? One second, sir.
Yeah, next slide.
So participants are requested to mute your audio. Participants, please kindly mute your audio. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, you can continue.
So, unlike laboratory dress code policies, rules for personal protection cover what employees should be wearing in the lab in order to protect themselves from various hazards, as well as basic hygiene rules to follow to avoid any sort of contamination. So, when working with equipment, hazardous material, glassware, heat, and chemicals, always wear. So, always wear face shield or safety glasses. When handling any toxic materials or hazardous agent, always wear the appropriate gloves. When performing laboratory experiments, you should always wear a smoke or lab coat. Before leaving the laboratory or eating, always wash your hand, because that is most important. After performing an experiment, you should always wash your hand with soap and water. When using lab equipment and chemicals, be sure to keep your hand away from your body, mouth, eyes, and face. Next slide. Yeah. So this is all about the chemical safety. So since almost every lab uses chemicals of some sort, chemical safety rules are very must, in this situation. Following these policies helps employees avoid spills and other accidents, as well as damage to the environment outside of the laboratory. These rules also set a clear procedure for employees to follow in the event that a spill does occur, in order to ensure it is cleaned up properly and injuries are avoided. So every chemical should be treated as it were dangerous. Do not allow any solvent to come into contact with your skin. All chemicals should always be clearly labeled with the name of the substance, its concentration, the date it was received, and the name of the person responsibility. And we need to include one more thing also here, date of preparation also we need to include here. So before removing any of the contents from a chemical bottle, read the label twice, because so that bottle contains sufficient safety information to how to handle the situation in case of emergency. Never take more chemicals from a bottle than you need for your work. Do not put unused chemical back into their original container. Chemicals or other materials should never be taken out of the laboratory. Chemicals should never be mixed in sink drains, because sometimes some of the chemicals are not environmental safe. So we have to be very careful about it. Flammable and volatile chemicals should only be used in a fume hood. This is very important point. If a chemical spill occurs, clean it up right away. Don't wait for anyone to come, or don't wait for some time so that we can clean it later on. Don't think that. Ensure that all chemical waste is disposed properly. Next slide. Like almost every other workplace, laboratories contains electronic equipments. So electrical safety rules help prevent the misuse of electronic instrument, electric shock, and other injuries. And ensure that any damaged equipment, cards, or plugs are reported to the appropriate authorities so that they can be repaired or replaced immediately. So before using any high voltage instrument, make sure you get permission from your laboratory supervisor. Otherwise, don't do that. So they should be keep informed about what all your activities with that particular machine, because these machines are high voltage machines. So high voltage equipment should never be changed or modified in any way. So always turn off a high voltage power supply when you are attaching it. So attaching the machine basically. So you use only one hand if you need to adjust any high voltage equipment. It is safest to place your other hand either behind your back or in a pocket. So make sure all electrical panels are unobstructed and easily accessible. Whenever you can avoid using extension cord, because in some of the labs people are using extension cord in order to operate high voltage instrument. That is not recommended basically. The next slide, please. So perhaps not as common as some of the other laboratory safety rules discussed here. Many laboratories do use laser. So I think you must have heard confocal microscopy and all. In that we use laser, and some of the physics laboratory they use lasers, high voltage lasers. And it is important to follow some key rules of thumb to prevent injuries, because we need to keep these rules, we have to follow this very strictly so that injuries can be avoided. In particular, accidents due to reflection or something that many employees may not think about it. A clear set of rules for the use of laser is essential to ensure that everyone is aware of all hazards and that the appropriate personal protective equipment is worn at all the times. Because laser, or people might have heard about this, laser accidents and all from the physics laboratory, so on. So even if you are certain that laser beam is eye safe or low power, you should never look into it because it's very dangerous. Always wear the appropriate goggle in area of the lab where laser are present. The most common laser injuries are those caused by scattered laser light reflecting either of the shiny surface of the optical table, the sides of mirror, or of mountings. Goggles will help you avoid damaging from such a scattered light. You should never keep your head at the same level as the laser beam. Always keep the laser beam at a below chest level. Laser beam should never be allowed to spread into the lab. Beam stop should always be used to intercept laser beams. Do not walk through laser beams because this is a rare symbol. You must not not have seen this, but in some kind of confocal facility and physics departments, you must have seen all this laser safety symbols. Next slide, please. So here I have, I'm going to discuss about some of the signage which would keep you informed about the dangers associated with the chemicals or dangers associated with the place and how to protect you from that. Okay, so depending upon the scientific research being conducted, a lab can be filled with dangerous chemicals, radioactive substances, biological specimens, sharp instruments, breakable glassware, and flammable objects. So thus, those working in the laboratory need to keenly aware of many dangers associated with these items. In order to maintain a safe workplace and avoid accidents, lab safety symbols and signs need to be posted throughout the workplace because that will guide you, how to avoid dangerous situations. So researchers, staffs, and visitors should note and understand the hazard communication information on the laboratory, safety signs, including specific hazardous agents, physical hazard present in the space, stated precautions and required personal protective equipment. So So these are all the following laboratory safety symbols warn of possible dangers in the laboratory to help lab professionals to keep safe and informed about the dangers. So next slide, please. So here, so from here after we'll see some of the signages which would help you, keep you informed about the danger associated with. So the glove safety symbol are to identify when hand protection should be worn for handling hazardous material even in the small quantities. It is most important to choose the appropriate type of gloves for the hazard present, such as chemical resistant gloves, heat resistant gloves, and so we have other gloves for biological aspects also. Be aware that no chemical resistant glove protects against all chemical hazards, because this you have to keep in mind. So we should not use the biological gloves, that is, nitrile gloves and all for chemical purpose, because that may get damaged. Read the material safety data sheet for guidance on the appropriate type of glove to wear, or consult with the lab supply distributor for glove. So you have to be very cautious in choosing chemically resistant gloves while working with the chemicals. Be aware that some materials may cause reaction in some workers, such as allergies to latex. Make sure the gloves fit properly, because I have seen people using, loosened gloves. So that is not recommended while working in the laboratory, because that may leads to accidental spillover. So the laboratory boot required safety, the boot safety symbol indicates when street shoes are not adequate for certain laboratory related tasks. So the chemical resistant overshoes or boot should be used to avoid possible exposure to corrosive chemicals or large quantities of solvents or water that might penetrate normal footwear. So leather shoes tend to absorb chemicals and may have to be discarded if contaminated with hazardous material. So in a lab, dropping a beaker of acid, as I said before, may soon destroy an ordinary pair of shoes. So that's why specialized laboratory footwear is designed for specified application and settings. Then the protective clothing. This safety symbol indicates that a lab coat or other protective clothing needs to be worn. So there are several types of lab coats for different types of protection. Cotton protects against flying objects, sharp or rough edges, and is usually treated with the fire retardants. Since many synthetic fibers can adhere to skin when burning, cotton is the most preferred laboratory coat, to work with the laboratory. Wool protects against splashes of molten materials, small quantities of acid, and small flames, etc. So synthetic fibers protect against sparks and infrared or ultraviolet radiation. So aluminized and reflective clothing protects against radiant heat. Then comes the safety glasses. This safety sign indicates there is a possibility of chemical, environmental, radiological, and mechanical irritant and hazard in the laboratory. So eye shields, also called safety glasses, goggles, or spectacles, not only provide protection against flying debris and chemical splashes in the laboratory, but may also protect against visible and near visible light or radiation from UV rays, depending on the lens material. Because each lens has separate sort of protection for our eyes. The most popular lens material for the laboratory safety eyewear is polycarbonate. This material has less than half the weight of the glass, so that it can be easily wear comfortably. So the modern eye shield design offer anti-slip nose bridges, anti-fog lenses, and coatings which makes them resistant to acid, caustics, and hydrocarbons. So like those who are working with chemical laboratory, so they can procure one and keep it for your safety. So next slide, please. So the first comes the breathing mask. So respirators are designed to prevent contaminated air from entering the body. So there are different types of breathing masks. Half mask respirators cover just the nose and the mouth. Full face respirator cover entire face, and hood or helmet style respirator cover the entire head. So respirators can protect the user in two ways: by cleaning the dirt outside air that passes through a filter, or absorption bed, or both when one inhales. So the clean air can enter, either be delivered via supply line, or the clean air is packaged and carried with you in a tank. So when you use the full respirator mask, the breathing mask safety sign let you know that you are working in an area with potential contaminated area. The next comes the face shield. The face protection safety symbol lets the lab personnel to know that how to say that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this will inform you the potential of causing an explosion inside of the hood. So full face protection from splash impact is commonly required for work on or the presence of human pathogens, such some laboratory chemicals explosion, heavy grinding and heavy spraying or splashing, and with large quantities of dangerous liquids such as acids, bases, and many organic liquids. A face shield can also afford extra protection against extreme temperatures also. So then comes the hearing protection. So noise in laboratory has become a growing concern nowadays. So while the noise level is most laboratories is below the threshold level, that damage your hearing thing. So laboratory noise can be fairly loud. The operation of large analyzers, so such as homogenizer and stirrer motors, all contribute to the noise level. So there is a wide variety of hearing protection available. Different devices are designed for protect against different severity of noise. So starting from a tolerable decibel to intolerable decibel. The ear protection safety symbol indicates that the lab workers are in a dangerously high decibel noise range. So next comes the IOS station. The IOS safety sign indicate the location of an IOS station. So it continuously provides low pressure stream of aerated water in the laboratory, in which chemical and biological agents are used, are stored, and in the facility where non-human primates are used, handled. The IOS station should be easily accessible from any part of the laboratory, and if possible, located near the safety shower, so that if necessary, the eyes can be washed while the body is showered. Yeah. Then comes the safety shower. These need to be installed in all areas where laboratory employees may be exposed to splashes or spills of materials that may be injurious to eyes and body. Showers should be placed as close to the hazardous material as possible, but in no case more than 10 seconds the travel time from the hazard. safety shower signage should be promptly displayed close to the shower so that they can easily identify and rush towards the safety shower, in no time. Then next comes the hand washing. So this is the primary safeguard against inadvertent exposure to toxic chemicals or biological agents. The wash hand safety sign let the lab personnel to know to wash their hands after removing solid protective clothing before leaving the laboratory and before eating, drinking, smoking, or using a restroom. So the workers should also wash their hand periodically during the day at intervals dictated by the nature of the work, because if they are using more hazardous chemical, they have to wash it very frequently. So otherwise, in a given point of duration, they can do it. Wash with soap and running water with hands held downwards to flush the contamination of the hands. So turn the tap off with a clean paper towel to prevent recontamination and dry hands with the clean towel. So the next comes food and drink prohibited area. So no food and drink safety sign let the laboratory personnel to know that eating or drinking is strictly prohibited in this area. So food or beverage containers should not be stored in the laboratory, and washed drinking cups, food containers, or eating utensils should not be dried on the laboratory drying racks. So it may get contaminated. That's why this point I have included. Refrigerators used for storage of research materials must not be used for storage of food and beverages, because this may contaminate your edibles. The next comes no pacemaker or no metallic implants. So this is a very important signage. So is used to warn lab staff of a strong magnetic field hazard. So this is caused by lab instrument that use superconducting magnetic sources such as nuclear magnetic resonance, that's NMR. Staff with pacemaker or metallic implants. So I think you must have heard about this, pacemaker and metallic stents, implants. So, the person who has this pacemaker and metallic stent should not go near the machine in order to avoid injuries. Next slide, please. So fire safety symbols. So here I have summarized a few. So fire can happen anywhere, but lab fire can be even more dangerous due to Bunsen burners, flame liquids, research documents, laptops, and lab equipments that might be present at any given time. That's why keeping laboratory safe is very important. Due to these unique circumstances, it is important that every lab to be prepared with the correct fire extinguishers, inspection requirements, and training. It is essential that occupants of a laboratory are fully aware of the risks and the appropriate extinguishers media. The fire extinguisher safety sign indicates the exact location of a lab fire extinguisher. Periodically check the date on the fire extinguisher to make sure that the extinguisher is full and the extinguisher is in good working condition. This is very important point, because I have seen in some of the places where they are keeping the expired fire extinguishers. So that is not safe and recommended also. The fire blanket safety sign indicates where a fire blanket is located in the lab. The woolen blanket is used for smoothing fires and for containing and controlling chemical spills. If someone in the lab catch fire, he or she should get on the ground and start rolling to extinguish the flames. So lab personnel can assist by using the blanket to speed extinguishing the fire, preventing further injury. So the fire blankets are large enough to entirely cover most of the people, depriving the fire of the oxygen that is needed to continue burning. So next comes this fire hose. The fire hose connection safety sign informed individuals of the location of hose connection in their laboratory. So those locations should be clearly and accurately marked so that whenever there is an emergency, they can be found and taken action at the earliest. The best safety practice is to post a fire hose location sign above the actual equipment and then install directional version of the fire hose location sign wherever the people cannot actually see the fire hose location. Next comes the no open flames. So this safety signage indicates to the lab personnel the risk and prohibition of open flame devices. So I think you might have seen the open flame devices such as burners, lighter, matches, and any other flame producing devices. Okay, so next comes first aid symbol. First aid symbols, yeah. So the first aid station safety symbol indicates the availability of first aid kits. The kit should be easily accessible to other lab locations that belong to a particular group. The first aid kit should contain the items recommended in the first aid kit policy and guidelines of the laboratory. It should be inspected monthly to ensure that no items are missing and that none of the remedies in the kit have expired, because this is a very important point, and we have to keep updated the particular kit. So for the expiry date and then for the availability. So whenever there is a injury, this can be used. Then comes the defibrillator. This sign indicates the location of laboratory automated external defibrillator so that it can be found quickly in the event of an emergency. This portable device used to treat sudden cardiac arrest checks the heart rhythm and can send an electric shock to the heart to try to restore a normal rhythm. So ideally, the lab should be trained on how to use this AED. AED matlab this system. So, but each unit comes with instructions so that even untrained staff can operate if it is necessary. Doing CRP in conjunction with using the AED can also improve the chances of survival of someone experiencing sudden cardiac arrest at the laboratory. So then comes the emergency meeting point. So this sign marks a safe place. So either inside or outside the building where laboratory employees should meet in the event of actual emergency. So in their safety training, employees should be made aware of the location of the emergency points or the meeting points closest to the location if there are multiple meeting points. So such locations should be large enough to accommodate all employees in the event of evacuation, especially. So it always a good idea to have a backup meeting point in case the primary one has been destroyed or inaccessible due to emergency situations. So next slide, please. So here I have given some of the hazardous symbol. The general warning lab safety symbol consists of black exclamation point in a yellow triangle. As you would expect, it is a general warning to laboratory staff that a hazard exists in the laboratory. This symbol can be found on equipment, doorways, cupboards, or other areas of the lab. It provides a good reminder to the workers to play safely and check if you are not sure of the safety procedures for certain equipments or areas in the lab, because this you can see in some of the centrifuges also, because I have seen recently. Okay, then health hazard. This sign denotes chemicals in the laboratory that can cause serious, often long-term health problems. So hazards include carcinogen, respiratory sensitizer, reproductive toxins, aspiration toxins, target organ toxins, and mutagens, etc. An important step in protecting workers' health in recognizing the various health hazards in the lab as ignorance of the harmful effects of laboratory material can serious and even fatal consequences. So, so if you see on the bottle itself, you can see this kind of signage. So based on that, we can follow the safety protocols. The biohazard lab safety sign warns of lab equipment such as fridges or freezers that either contains biohazard material or could be contaminated with biohazards material such as blood samples. So nowadays, if you see in the COVID laboratories and all, you can see the symbol in all the fridges where they keep the samples collected. This sign also marks entire area of the lab that either contains or exposed to biohazard. For example, a lab working with infectious agents. So workers should always wear the proper PPE and following proper procedure when working with such agents. So managers should also have an effective exposure control plan in place in case of an emergency. So regular cleaning and decontamination of areas and equipments that are exposed to biohazard is very important. So then, yeah, harmful irritants. The substance labeled with harmful irritant symbol are not corrosive, but they can cause discomfort and reddening, irritation or blistering of the skin. So laboratory workers should handle irritants carefully. So working with irritants in the fume hood can help individual avoid inhalation, and they can use of course the mask, the chemical mask. So examples of irritant substance include ammonia, chloroform, and chlorine. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the toxic material symbol indicates the presence of substance that may harm an individual if they enter the body. So possible routes of exposure to toxic material are thorough inhalations, skin contact, and ingestion. The hazards and the health effect associated with toxic materials depends on specific material in question. So the route of exposure and the concentration of the material, because when the concentration increases automatically, the level of the risk also increases. The corrosive material hazard safety sign indicates corrosive substances in the laboratory that can eat away the skin if you come into contact with. So such material should always be stored at the proper humidity and temperature condition in the proper cabinets too. So all employees who handle corrosive substance should be properly trained and wear gloves and protective clothing and face protection, and as and when required. So next comes the carcinogen hazard. This sign in the laboratory indicates the use of known human carcinogens. The carcinogenic substance used in the laboratory includes the formaldehyde, paraformaldehyde, methylene chloride, and benzene. So whenever you use these chemicals, you have to be extra cautious. And next comes the explosive hazard. The exploding bomb symbol will appear on chemicals in the lab that have explosive properties. These includes unstable explosives, self-reactive substances, and mixtures, and organic peroxides. So next. So high voltage symbol, which indicates a lightning bolt arrow in a yellow triangle. Once high voltage, once of high voltage enough to cause a serious injury or death. In general, you should stay away from equipments or areas of the lab marked with this symbol, though if you need to work close to such hazardous instruments. So here you can wear a rubber gloves, which would be highly helpful in protection. So next comes the electrical hazard. The electrical hazard safety symbol, which typically includes a frayed wire and a hand with a lightning bolt across it, so indicates any electrical hazard in the laboratory. So such hazard can cause anything from a mild tingling to death. If an electrical hazard is suspected, the device in question should be disconnected immediately and the cause determined by qualified technician, and it has to be repaired immediately. So equipment should always be turned off and unplugged when any work is being done on it. So next comes the laser beam. So this we have discussed already. Then comes the UV light hazard. So this symbol will appear near ultraviolet light areas to warn personnel of the potential dangers. So UV light is a type of electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength between 180 to 400 nanometer, which is shorter than those of visible light, but longer than those of X-rays. So health effects due to acute exposure to UV light includes redness, ulceration on the skin, while chronic exposure can lead to skin cancer. So you have to be extra cautious while handling with this, especially in biological laboratory. People used to view the DNA gel on the ultraviolet radiation. So during that time, you have to take extra caution, like you have to wear the proper gloves, which is UV resistant, and the face shield also, in order to protect you from ultraviolet radiations. So, next slide, please. Yeah. So the broken glass symbol may be placed on the container designated for the disposal of broken glass in the laboratory, because this is very important. People, they collect all the hazardous material and they never segregate. So they put all together and put it in a bag and then they dispose it. So this practice should be avoided. So yeah, then hot surface. So as you would expect, the hot surface safety symbol warns laboratory employees of burn hazard from hot surfaces. For example, if you see in polymerase chain reaction machine, on the heating lid, you must have seen this symbol. Such hazards can come from laboratory equipment such as lab ovens, autoclaves, and some RT-PCR and PCR, and dry bath also you can see this kind of symbols. So you have to be extra cautious, while touching the surface, and you should use specific PPE in order to protect you from that damage. The low temperature warning symbol warns staff of low temperature or cryogenic hazard in the laboratory. Such temperatures are usually much lower than freezing point and can be found in cold storage area of the lab, or where chemicals such as liquid nitrogen, and how to say that, like compressed, how to say that, dry ice are stored. PPE for working with cryogenic and low temperature hazards may be included in this particular situation. Gloves designated for this purpose and long pants, closed shoes or boots or rubber apron can be used to avoid injuries. Next slide. Yeah. So the ionizing radiation hazard safety signs, that's the first one. So which indicates the presence of ionizing radiation. The ionizing radiation is, the radiation that carries enough energy to liberate electrons from atoms or molecules, thereby ionizing them. So source of ionizing radiations in the laboratory includes X-ray apparatus, medical beam cannons, and particle accelerators. This you can see in physics laboratory. Any laboratory process or use radioactive isotopes must be licensed by Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, because these are all environmental threats. So we have to keep informing the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board for the license and whatever activities you are making, and even you have to procure such a things from them only to keep an account. The non-ionizing radiation hazard sign warns the staff of sources of non-ionizing radiation in the lab. So such radiation has a lower frequency and longer wavelength than ionizing radiation. So non-ionizing radiations include a spectrum of ultraviolet rays, visible light, infrared, microwaves, radio frequency, and extremely low frequency. So, see, in lasers, fluorescent lamps, and some photosensitive chemicals are example of non-ionizing radiation in the laboratory. So, biological safety cabinets, PPE, and engineering controls are some of the measures used to minimize exposure to the such as because it's almost similar to what we have discussed with the UV radiation. So then comes the optical radiation in another terms. The last one is optical radiation. Okay. So the optical radiation hazard covering ultraviolet radiation, visible light, and infrared radiation. The optical radiation hazard safety sign warns of the equipment that produces radiation in the lab. Means optical radiation.
So next slide, sir.
No, wait. So I have some problem with my computer, that's why. 2 minutes. Yeah, this particular science, one of the equipments that produces this type of radiation in the lab, such as high-powered laser. So normally in biological sciences, we never use high-powered laser and all. So in physics laboratories, they use high-powered laser. So especially when working with this such hazard, proper eyewear should always be worn. For laser in particular, proper SOPs should be in place. The beam path of the laser system should be enclosed, and the user should perform a physical survey for any unwanted reflection before using the laser, because this is very important, to check this kind of laboratory prior for executing the work. Next slide, please. So here I have summarized some other symbols other than like what we have discussed. The dangers to the environmental symbol indicates a substance in question can cause damage to the environment and is most often used to label chemicals that are toxic to aquatic wildlife. So the environmental hazard are classified as either acute or chronic. The laboratory workers should dispose of environmental hazard material properly and ensure that they do not get washed down the drain, because as I have mentioned this earlier, because this is very important. So such a case you have to take extra caution to dispose. The flammable and combustible symbol signifies substance that will ignite and continue to burn in air. So substance in this category may be gases, aerosols, liquids, or solids, and include many solvents and cleaning materials that are commonly used in the laboratory. So the worker should always keep flammable materials always from open flame, heat sparks, and ignition sources. So then comes the oxidizing agent. So the oxidizing material indicates the presence of chemicals that readily gives off oxygen or other oxidizing substances. So oxidizing materials may intensify fire and cause explosions, and also may be toxic or corrosive to the workers. So although air is the usual source of oxygen for burning, oxidizing material can support a fire even in the absence of air. So that's why this is very important. So some common oxidizing liquids and solids found in laboratories are bromine, nitrate, perchloric acids, peroxides, and some chlorates. Yeah. Then comes the flammable gas. The flammable gas symbol represents gas that will burn or explode if mixed with air, oxygen, or other substances in the presence of source of ignition. The flammable gas used in the laboratory includes ethylene chloride, aerosols, and liquefied petroleum gas. Yeah. So compressed flammable gases are common in many labs, and they are extremely dangerous to work with and around. So you have to keep an eye on this kind of gases whenever you get into the laboratory and whenever you come out of the laboratory. This is most important. Next slide, please. Yeah. So compressed gas, as indicated by the symbol, are routinely used in the laboratory. So there are three types of gases that get stored under pressure in cylinders. That is liquefied gas, non-liquefied gas, and dissolved gas. The high pressure within a cylinder makes compressed gas hazardous, as gas can flow rapidly from the cylinder and can make accident injuries and explosions. The symbol for non-flammable gases signifies a division of gases found in lab that encompasses compressed gases, liquefied gases, cryogenic gases, compressed gases in solution, and oxidizing gases. Specific examples of non-compressible gases includes carbon dioxide, freon, helium, and nitrogen. So although they are not a fire hazard, non-flammable gases display oxygen. Yeah, it displays oxygen and cause asphyxiation or death, because it reduces the oxygen level in the environment, and finally that leads to the hypoxia, and finally leads to death. That's why you have to always keep an eye on the leakages of this particular cylinders. So certain piece of laboratory equipment generates strong magnetic field. So you can see a U-shaped magnetic symbol here. The strong magnetic field sign alerts lab members to the danger that this type of equipment can pose. The risk are especially imminent for people wearing pacemaker and implants, which will tend to align themselves with the magnetic field lines, as will lines. So that this particular person who have this kind of implants and pacemakers should be extra cautious, and it is better to avoid such an instrument. So then comes the recycling symbol. So the internationally recognized recycling symbol is formed of three arrows that pointed in a never-ending loop. So the arrow from a triangle shape. The recycling sign is used in laboratory to indicate where recyclable items are gathered and stored. Such items can include any plastic that is not characterized as biohazard or radio hazard, or type 1, type 2 laboratory plastics, gloves, pipette tips, styrofoams, cardboards, etc. So while throwing away all these kind of recycling, materials, you have to use a separate, container to do so. So because these things can be recycled, and by the way, we can protect the environment. So these signages will keep you informed about the potential hazard involved in the laboratory, so that one can take precautions or avoid to get protected. Yeah, next slide, please. So here I have summarized some of the good general work practices, for the laboratory staffs. So first of all, inspect the workplace for potential hazard before each shift or work. Because whenever you enter the laboratory, you have to, watch the potential hazards, and the equipments, and regularly you have to watch, is there anything, abnormal. So the safety rules and procedures for the laboratory and institution should be known. The emergency procedures for spills, fires, injuries, and other incidents, in particular, know the location of first aid kits, emergency showers, eye wash stations, fire extinguishers, and spill cleanup material, and how to use them. And also ensure that emergency exit and emergency equipments are completely accessible. So this point is very important. So whenever you join as a technical staff, or you join as a laboratory staff, or you join as a lab member, so you should first consider all these points, and you have to check where it is located first of all. So wear appropriate personal protective equipments, including clothing, footwear, head protection, eye protection, gloves, and respiratory protection as and when required. Read the safety data sheet for any hazardous product that use, and follow any recommendation, recommended safety precautions. So ensure that the laboratory has adequate general ventilations. Wear comfortable shoes with provided protection appropriate for the tasks. So correct layout of the work area to avoid ergonomic problems. So plan and organize your work to avoid stress and fatigue associated with long work days, shift work, and tight deadlines. So because whenever you work for this kind of tight deadlines, sometimes it may happen to forget about all these safety measures. So to avoid that, you have to plan, and you have to be very organized in the laboratory. So follow good house, in particular, avoid loose electric cords, store boxes and unused equipment in designated areas away from the work area, so that the accidental breakage or accidental spillover, this kind of stuff may be avoided. So long hair, loose clothing, jewelry should be contained to reduce the risk of entanglement in movement of equipment. So this is very important whenever you open the centrifuge, and whenever you do, you open and close some of the instrument. So this may happen. So you have to be extra cautious in all these things, because this instrument spin in a very high speed. So we cannot control once your hair or your gels get tangled into it. Okay. Then, so learn risk of bloodborne pathogens and how to control it. So these are all the very important general work practices for the lab staffs to avoid accidents. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, so everyone in the lab is responsible for their own safety and the safety of others. So you have to keep this in mind. So one should be cognizant of potential hazard by conducting all experiments and demonstrations prior to their implementation. So advanced planning coupled with knowledge is the best offense in case of an emergency. Because whenever you use a chemical or you use a protocol, so you should have some advanced planning at the same time. What are all the reagents you are using, and these accounts you should have, and in case of spillage, how it can be rectified. These things you have to keep in mind always whenever you start planning for work. The introductory laboratory should engage each student in significant experience with experimental process, including some experience designing investigations. The laboratory accidents are caused by unsafe conditions such as improperly guarded or unguarded instrument. So defective instrument, slippery, weak or uneven floors, hazardous arrangements, improper ventilation and illumination. So this point is very critical here. So because this unsafe condition, so how it occurs, how is like how, especially when you operate an instrument, so how to switch on the instrument, how to switch off the instrument, first you have to learn that. Because some people they simply plug in the machine and simply run it, and once they complete the work, and they simply switch it off and they go away. So we should avoid that thing, and whenever you handle a high voltage instrument, you have to keep the instrument on 5 minutes before, and then you have to start programming it for the speed or whatever analysis, and you can analyze your sample safely, and then wait for 5 minutes, because if it is a refrigerant centrifuge, air droplets may be there, so it has to go out, or you have to wipe it properly so that you can avoid further injury to the instrument. So if the instruments are unsafe, then we are also unsafe. So for that reason, I am specifying this. Then laboratory accidents are also caused by unsafe acts such as making safety devices inappropriately, using unsafe instrument, unsafe positions, horseplay, failure of safe clothing, using unsafe dress or apparels. Unsafe acts are due to, especially these unsafe acts are due to human elements, which includes physical and mental characteristics, knowledge, skills and attitude of the individual. So whenever you want to work in the laboratory, or whenever you work in the laboratory, you have to keep your mind free, of any hazardous thinking, so that you will be safe, and your laboratory will be safe, and your laboratory will be productive. Next slide. Yeah, so these are all the reference from where I have taken the informations. Next slide, please. So successful, of course, successful lab analyst will put safety at the first priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now the session is open for queries. Participants, kindly unmute your audio and you can raise the questions.
Sir, there are many appreciation messages on the chat box. The session was very informative and very useful. So really the session was very informative, sir. You have a lot of symbols that you gave were really, it was new to us. Few symbols were really new to us. Thank you so much. So as madam said, please post your questions in the chat box, or else if you want to talk, you can raise your hand so that you can unmute your audio and you can ask your query.
I think I haven't taken much time of you, right?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not at all.
Yes.
Sir, I have a query for regarding saying about the lab coats.
Mm-hmm.
So the fabric is very important, right now, sir?
Very important.
Is very important. So in that case, what you recommend for when we work with the corrosive chemicals, or when we work with the animal models, or is there should be a difference between these type of fabrics that we adopt to, or a normal, if a student, the fabric should be how it should be, sir?
So basically, for biological laboratory, we use cotton, pure cotton. Yeah. So I have seen some people wearing polyester because of the cost. Because when you buy a cotton, this lab coat, that may cost around 600 to 1,000 rupees. But when you buy a polyester thing, that may less cost. So because of that, unknowingly they are buying it and they are getting into risk. So it's better to have always the cotton apparel. If you are working with the highly corrosive things and all, then you can go for the woolen one.
Yes, sir.
Which is specifically used in chemistry laboratories, because that is not necessary. This phenol and chloroform are not that much corrosive. This cotton laboratory apron would be much sufficient, and they must wear always a glove when they use this kind of corrosive materials, especially when they are doing plasmid isolation, DNA isolation. So these are all the particular occasion when they use this corrosive materials. like chloroform and then phenols. So by the time they should be, they should be very careful in order to get them injured. Yeah.
Yes. There was no much session. Sir, could you please share your email ID in the chat box, like when they have queries also, if they want to contact you,
Yeah, definitely.
keep in touch with you with that email ID.
Yeah.
You can later on have a contact with sir through the mail ID what he is posting to us in the chat box.
So it's good that you have organized such a, things related to laboratory safety.
Yeah, sir.
Yes, this is very important, but most of the institutions they ignore. But at least you have taken the initiative to put in front. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your acceptance to ready coming to your spending your valuable time with us.
Yeah, though the subject is very dry, but it is very important also at the same time.
Yes, sir. So one more query to you, sir. Like when we after working with the cultures, when we discard it, so most of us do all our de-sterilization process, and then only we sterilize it and we discard it.
Yeah.
How far, like nowadays, different viruses are emerging, but still 100%, how could we save us? Because now after Corona has landed with us, we started to think like what could be the next virus to boom up in the world. So in such a case, how far an individual should protect themselves while working with that sort of cultures and other things?
So, like as I said in my presentation, the PP, the personal protective equipment is most important. So, a person who is working with bacteria or virus, they know very well about the bacteria or virus in which they are working on. So appropriate, for example, according to the infectious rate, they can go for the level of they can increase the level of safety, like BSL-1 or BSL-2 or BSL-3 or BSL-4, because this corona comes under BSL-3 if I'm correct, and also somehow now it can be put in BSL-4 also. So by the way, we have to understand the infectiousness of the particular bacteria or the thing. Then we have to select the appropriate protocol, that is SOP, for executing the experiments. For example, in the laboratory, especially in the molecular biology laboratory, we must be using this recombinant bacteria and all. So these recombinant bacteria and all, they are not safe if I'm correct. So for that also we need to use a proper PPE in order to avoid them. And while decontaminating also, we have to autoclave it properly, and then we have to discard them properly. So that we can avoid we can keep them environmental safe. Not safe, like we can discard them in an environmental safest way. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So from the audience perspective, like we have a question in the chat box in WhatsApp group, sir.
Yeah.
What are the injections or what are the precautionary measures a person should take before working with the animal models? When they handle with mice and
First of all, they have to take anti-rabies vaccine. So, and second thing is the TT they supposed to take. These are the main vaccine they're supposed to take before working with the particular animal models. At the same time, when they work for a specific diseases, for example, some people may work with cholera bacteria. In that case, they're supposed to specifically take that particular vaccine in order to protect themselves if there is an accidental infection. Yeah, so only this, and the rest of the time they have to take a proper precaution. They have to use proper PPE in order to avoid the bacteria, or whatever infective agents they use.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So participants, sir has posted his email ID in the chat box. You can also note it down. You can write to sir about different doubts, what you have in your mind. So later on too. So now I pass over to Kaviyarasi to continue with the program. Kaviyarasi,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
over to you, ma'am.
Gratitude is not in the words, but in the heart, which expresses it. I'm very grateful to welcome Ms. Lalita, Assistant Professor, Department of Biochemistry, to give the vote of thanks. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kaviyarasi ma'am. Good afternoon to one and all and present here. On behalf of management, dignitaries, Department of Biochemistry, it's my privilege to have proposed a vote of thanks on this occasion. I deemed it a great honor to thank Managing Trustee, Correspondent ma'am, Secretary ma'am, Principal, Vice Principal, and DBT Star College Scheme Coordinator who have helped us for gracing today's occasion. First of all, I would like to propose hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest, Dr. B. Chandramohan, Scientific Officer, School of Biological Science, National Institute of Science, Education and Research. Thank you, sir, for your very interesting and thought-provoking address about safety measures. I would like to thank our beloved HOD ma'am for her moral support and guidance to make this program successful. I also extend my thanks to our organizing team and our staff members to have made this a great success. I would also thank our team members who have been working behind for doing invitation and technical support for us. Finally, I thank energetic, enthusiastic participants who have turned up from various departments to form such a great members team to make this program successful. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Once again, I thank you all. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So I request all the participants to complete their feedback link before leaving the session. Once again, I request all the participants who have supported us to complete the session very successfully and requesting you all to complete the feedback link. Thank you.
Chandramohan sir, nice presentation, sir.
Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
very much for accepting our invitation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. The participants, I repeat, the feedback link is posted in the chat box. I hope, Kaviyarasi ma'am, you can repost it so that they get the link.
Ma'am, just now I repost the feedback link, ma'am.
Yeah, post it again. So before you leave the session, you see to that you complete the feedback and then you leave. So thank you everyone for joining. Yes.